Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you about The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. Now, this is a Zelda game, so I'm going to assume that you either already know what Zelda games are, or that you've already watched my first Zelda review about the first Legend of Zelda. Otherwise, good luck. So this does a lot of Zelda stuff. This is a game that came out for the Game Boy in 1992. And it does a lot of general Zelda stuff. It was going to actually be a remake of A Link to the Past for the Game Boy, but for some reason, I don't remember all the details, that someone had an idea for an original game, so that idea kind of got scrapped, and they just went with this original idea. And I'm very glad that they did, because while it does do a lot of general Zelda stuff, and you can definitely see a lot of parallels that were, and ideas and stuff that were taken from A Link to the Past, there's a lot of new and interesting stuff, and a lot of just weird things in this game. And I happen to love it quite a bit. It's interesting because, for one thing, it doesn't take place in Hyrule. It's one of those cool differences. It's in this weird place. Like, basically the story is that, you start off, in the opening cutscene before you even start playing the game, it's before the title screen, is that, you're, sailing on the ship in a storm, and then, lightning strikes or whatever, it breaks your ship, and, you wash up on shore, and, someone finds you, and the game starts off with you waking up in a bed in this strange island, and, the whole kind of story thing is about you trying to, basically just you trying to leave the island, figure out where you are, figure out how to leave, and that's mostly it. And, here's a spoiler for it, so if you don't want any spoiler, for this, I'm sorry, you just either skip ahead to something, or, it's not much of a spoiler, let me tell you that, because basically everyone hints at it pretty obviously throughout the game. And in the last, quarter of the game or so, they're pretty much flat out just telling you this. And, the name of the game is called Link's Awakening. So if you hadn't guessed, by now, the whole thing is like a dream, which is why it doesn't take place in Hyrule. It's all, just a dream world, and that's cool. That's why it's so kind of, weird. You feel like you kind of understand it, but you also kind of don't. If you're, a Zelda player, and you're like, I kind of get this stuff, but I also am not exactly sure on some of it, because it's all kind of weird. And there's a lot of Zelda enemies and stuff, but it's not super Zelda-y. It's Hyrule, and Gorons, and Zoras, and the Deku. It's not a bunch of that. It's there's some of that stuff in enemies, but some of the enemies, in things, look different and feel different than they do in other games. And, there's some other stuff thrown in there that's, weird. There's some, Mario stuff thrown in there, too. One of the characters people say is basically Mario. I can see the way they would kind of think that, but I'm not really bought. It doesn't look close enough to be Mario, to me. Maybe that's just my opinion. There is a Yoshi doll in the game, though. It's just called a Yoshi doll. It's Yoshi. So you can't argue that one. I'll give you that one, because I believe that one. And, it's just really cool to see this weird, kind of bizarre, world that's... A lot of people are, weird in it as well, and they have, kind of weird pieces of dialogue, and there's a weird, kind of an inner, monologue stuff that comes up every now and then about how you feel about things. And there's some cool secrets in the game. They do well with the whole adventuring thing, and the secrets, and having some cool, puzzles for you to figure out, and some, for main game stuff or for secrets. Some fun dungeons. I like the music in the game. Specifically, I really like the flares added to the overworld theme, and the mountain theme. Those are great. And the dungeon themes are kind of weird, but I guess they give us this kind of atmosphere to it, so that's cool. And one of the things I wanted to say about the design also is this: I love the way this is, the overworld and everything is kind of designed. And a lot of the secret areas is, there are a lot of areas you can kind of get to, and they're oh, here's, a secret cave thing, whatever, I can, bomb walls, and sometimes you can see a bombable wall, other times you do have to just kind of poke around at the walls with your sword until you hear the more hollow clank, and then you're oh, I can bomb this wall, and there's no, real indication besides me doing that, And I love that there's like still like the blatant ones where you can find them, and there's also like these more hidden ones that you can find, but they're still like findable. Unlike in like the first Zelda, where like you always had to be, you know, you couldn't clank your sword on the wall, so you had to be like, well, I don't know, I'll just throw like a bomb at this place because, you know, in the middle of the wall in these dungeons, I guess would be bombable. I guess, but like this is cool because like you do kind of have to think about it for some of these and like go look and find them, and I think that's really cool because then there's a bunch of stuff you could miss if you don't. But I like how the world is like designed in a way too, where like you can go into like secret areas or go into places where like, okay, I want to keep progressing this way, but it's like, oh, like there's like a hole here and I don't know how to get over this hole, or like, oh, there's like a rock in my way and I don't know how to lift this rock up. And I think that's it's a cool thing where it's like, okay, well, I can't do this right now, but you go and you like get an item, and later you come back and you're like, oh, I can get past this part now. And you can even find like secret areas where it's like there's like a heart piece thing over there. How do I get over there to do it? I can't do that right now. And you have to like come back to those places later and do it again. And so you have to kind of remember where that stuff was and be like, yeah, I got to do that secret thing over there now. And I think it's a genius way to design like the overworld, because it doesn't feel like, oh, like it's not just like the game saying like, no, don't go this way. You know, it's like you went and you found that item, you earned that item that you got. Now you're adventuring this way, and you're like, oh, like I can go this way now because like these rocks aren't a problem anymore. And it doesn't feel like, you know, there's just like someone in the way that's saying this is not the way you're supposed to go yet. So I think it's really cool the way it's designed. I think the overworld just feels awesome in that regard too. Which is a great like flow to it, and it's great to try and go around and find the secrets and find the main stuff, and just overall, like, the flow of the game goes really smoothly, while still feeling like it's, like there's, I don't know how to put it, I guess, feeling like the stuff you're doing is still significant as well, and I think that's great. And I guess in terms of that story, too, like, the story is kind of interesting. It's not super deep or anything, even though it kind of tries to be, but I think it's really good, and you do kind of help other people along the way, but it's kind of cool how this is more of a quest about you, like you're trying to get off the island, and yeah, you're helping some people here and there, but overall, like, it's you trying to, you know, escape the island, and, you know, go to, I don't know if you're trying to go home or wherever it was you were trying to go in the first place, but you're trying to get there, and there is not on this island, so that's cool. I guess there are some downsides to the game I should bring up also, because that is a thing. In regards to like the little thing in regards to like the music, like I said, one thing I find annoying is like there are these two little power-ups you can find from fallen enemies, and they are a guardian acorn and a piece of power. And getting the guardian acorn makes you it increases your defense. It doubles your defense for a short amount of time, either until you go to a different area or until like you're hit so many times. And that's how long it works that way for both of them. And the piece of power, same way, hit so many times or you go to a different area, I believe. And the piece of power doubles your attack, but it also allows you to, like, when you hit an enemy, it'll push them way back across the screen because you're so powerful. It also lets you walk a little bit faster, which is kind of interesting. But the thing I don't like about those, for one thing, is that they have to tell you what they are every single time you pick one up. You pick one up and it has a little description box. You're like, okay, I get it, I know what it is, I picked one of these up before. I haven't even powered off the system and it's still telling me what it does, even though I know. So that's annoying that it has to break the flow of it every time you do that. It's not that big of a deal, but it is really annoying. Also I don't like that it changes the music to get this little, it's a very short little jingle thing, to let you know that, oh, this power-up is still active. And, which is needed for the Guardian Acorn because there's no other real indication other than that. But with the piece of power, your sword is flashing anyway. Does it need to have that song going? And that's why I don't like it when it interrupts, you know, the mood music in, like, a dungeon or, like, the awesome music of, like, the mountain or the overworld that I like a lot. So a lot of times I'll find myself just trying to avoid collecting those because I don't want them. I don't want to, like, take that little break and I'll, like, go back a screen and come back again if it's, like, blocking my way, and then so it'll disappear, you know. So, I don't know. Like, that was a little bit annoying. Another thing is, like, I feel like they tried to make rupees be worth it in this game. to give you things to buy, and there are a few things for you to buy in the game. But it seems like there's a few like little like items and stuff, like, you know, you can buy like hearts, but you get those from killing enemies, and you can buy like I guess if you ever lose your shield, you could buy that again. But it's like hearts, bombs, and arrows are the things that you can usually get like in a shop that you might run out of and want to buy again, I guess. But the thing is, you can usually kill enemies and they'll just drop that stuff anyway. Or if you need that stuff in a dungeon, it drops that stuff. You know, there's places for you to get them within the dungeon. So there's no reason for you to have to go buy those. So going to do that is kind of a waste of time and a waste of rupees, really, because you can quickly just get them very easily. So I find that weird. Along with the fact that there are a couple things you do need to buy, and the few things you do need to buy cost hundreds of rupees. One of the things you need to get in the game is the bow and arrow. I believe, I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's essential for completing the game. I'm fairly certain. And, you see, you have to buy the bow. When you buy the shovel, first you have to buy the shovel in the shop, because the bow only becomes available after you buy the shovel. And you will need the shovel for, like, one part specifically, I believe. And there's some other parts. There's probably a few parts where you need it, but for the most part, it's just like extra for finding secrets and such. The shovel costs 200 rupees, which at the beginning of the game is a lot of rupees, so you might not buy it up, you know, like right away. And then you buy that, and then after that, now the bow is available, and the bow costs 980 rupees out of your max rupees, which is 999. That's a little bit fucking insane, because then it means you just have to wait a really long time before you can get that, or you just have to grind up rupees for a really long time before you get that. And what I would do a lot of the time is just kind of go into that little grass yard next to the shop, and I would just keep cutting down all of the grass in that screen, and then I would keep digging up all of the stuff, and just like wait until I got enough rupees. Honestly, you shouldn't do that, because you're gonna get rupees in the dungeons through secrets and from fighting enemies throughout the game. You're gonna get enough rupees to do the stuff you need to do without grinding for it. So I don't know why they bothered to just make it that expensive anyway. It's kind of ridiculous. They could have just had that be a quest item or something, or, you know, made other stuff for you to buy. I don't know. There wasn't much else, I guess, for you to really buy at that point either, you know. Although I think maybe letting you buy magic powder would have been a decent, you know, thing to put in there too, because that's the thing I actually run out of, isn't dropped as much, and that's one thing they don't sell in that shop. So whatever. There's a few like mini game things you can do. There are a few things you need to buy with them. So the rupees do come into play. But for the most part, you're probably going to have an abundance of rupees in this game, and you're either just not going to have enough to do a super expensive thing right away, or you're going to have plenty when you don't even need them for anything. Those are like the extremes. Also, the game holds your hand a lot. It's the thing that kind of bugs me is, like, yeah, Link to the Past sort of did that, where they would, you know, they numbered out, oh, go to these dungeons in this order on the map, and a lot of people would probably tell you what to do. The thing is, like, for people telling you what to do, you had to go and, like, talk to them and, like, want to get that information from them, or, like, go to the fortune tellers and they'll tell you stuff on what you're supposed to do. But with this game, with Link's Awakening, it's more like, okay, well, there's this owl that follows you around and is telling you what to do all the fucking time. Like, okay, like, you should go over here. Okay, you've done this. You got this key. You should go back this way to find the dungeon. Hey, you beat the dungeon. You should go this way to find the next, you know, the key or next dungeon or whatever. And it happens, like, every time you finish, like, a dungeon. And, like, there's a little part near, like, the middle end of the game, I think, where he kind of backs off a bit. But for the most part, he's kind of telling you what to do this whole time, and he's trying to guide you, which I don't mind that much, but it's not necessarily necessary, you know? It's a thing where it's like, I could figure that out on my own. I'd like to just adventure and go figure it out. It's not like you have the option to just, like, ignore him. Like, he's gonna sit there in front of you and ask you all this stuff. And you're like, okay. And, like, you can go back onto your map screen and go back to the spot where he was, and just click the little owl icon to see what he said again, in case you forgot where you're supposed to go, which is fine. But, you know, it's kind of annoying because it's like, you shouldn't necessarily need to talk to him, because there's also the phone booths you can go to and try to figure out, okay, where do I go to next? That's, I don't think you needed to have the owl force it down you. That's the only problem with that too. Is like it's kind of forced upon you, and it's okay because it's kind of mystic, and it doesn't feel like it's okay. Here's the prophecy. Here's what was written. So this is what has to happen and everything. It is just someone telling you like you should go do this so that you can do this thing. Like he's trying to guide you without giving you a huge, overwhelming backstory bullcrap thing to make you feel like you're not in control of your own destiny. But it's also still like, let me figure it out. Let me go just do stuff. Do you remember somebody pointing you in a bunch of different directions in the first Legend of Zelda? Fuck no. If anybody gave you a hint in there, it's because you explored and found them. And it's like, this is just like, go do the thing. So that's a little annoying. There's also an exploit in here where if you hit select while transitioning between screens, you'll find yourself on the opposite end of the next screen. So like say you're going up, and normally if you go up a screen, you'd end up on the bottom of the next screen. But if as you're transitioning up through the screen, you hit select, if you do that at the right time, once you hit select again, you'll come back and you'll be on the top of the next screen, which is a way for you to sequence break, and that's probably bad. I don't know if it was something put in intentionally. It seems like it'd be like more of a glitch. I'm not exactly sure. Either way, it's bad that it's there, because while you can use it to sequence break or speed run and do stuff like that, I guess if that's the kind of thing you want to do, it's a really easy way to get stuck. Sometimes you can go and do it in caves and get to spots you're not supposed to be able to get to, or dungeons and spots you're not supposed to be able to get to, and you'll end up in other dungeons or in other caves and stuff, and they're just weirdly interconnected on their own kind of map, somehow, I guess. But, it's also an easy way, like I said, it's an easy way for you to get stuck and have to just, like, restart your game. And if you save in those spots, sometimes, like, in some of the spots, if you save, you can actually screw yourself, and your game is broken for that, and you have to start over. And, so that's kind of a bad thing. And, also one other, it's a kind of a nitpick, I guess, for me. It's like, to save the game, there's no easy way to save it. You have to either die, or do this trick where you hit all the buttons at the same time. You'd be like, A, B, start, and select. And then you'll bring up a menu if it says you want to return the game or save and quit. And when you save, and quit, when you come back, you'll be like inside of you'll be just outside or just inside of the last cave or place that you were in, cave or house, dungeon, whatever. And the only nitpick I have about that is that I was playing in the Game Boy Advance SP, so sometimes if you do that, you have to be kind of careful because the game's kind of sticking out of the bottom and everything, and it's kind of thin. And one time I think I hit too hard or something, because when I went to save the stuff after playing for a few hours, I went to save, and I guess I hit too hard or something, and the game just froze, and so I lost all that progress. So that's kind of annoying. Just maybe put in a save thing in the menu somewhere. That would be nice, but I don't know. I mean, maybe they could fix that stuff, maybe if they had a remake, which they did! In 1998, they released Link's Awakening DX for the I don't know if you'd say it's for the Game Boy or the Game Boy Color, and here's a quick little thing on why. So, there are Game Boy games. They come in these gray cartridges. They say Nintendo Game Boy on them, with this little nick in the corner. And they can be played on the Game Boy or on the Game Boy Color, although they won't have any color on the Game Boy Color. Then, we have Game Boy Color games. You see, they're in these translucent kind of cases. They have this little bulging part here, and they say, if you can read that there, Game Boy Color. These can be played in the Game Boy Color, but they will not function in the Game Boy, so you need the Game Boy Color to play them. And then we have Link's Awakening DX. It's in one of these cases, and you see these are interesting because, well, it clearly doesn't really look like, the Game Boy Color case. It looks more like the Game Boy case, with it saying Nintendo Game Boy on it and having that small nick in the corner. But it's in a black case. Why is that? There are actually a number of games in these black cases, and I looked it up. And Well, from my research, basically these were games that were made once the Game Boy Color was out, but they wanted to make sure that people with the Game Boy weren't left out of these games as well. So, these games can be played on your Game Boy. Yet, if you play them on your Game Boy Color, you will also get the benefit of having specifically colored items within the game. So, is it a Game Boy or Game Boy Color game? Well, I still don't really know. So that is why I'm not sure what to say Link's Awakening DX is. But I guess, I don't know when the box it came in or anything, so whatever. But Link's Awakening DX is the remake of Link's Awakening, and it can be played on the Game Boy or the Game Boy Color, so just know that. Now, if you play it on the Game Boy Color, you're going to get the added benefit of having color for everything, which is neat. And it's cool that that's there. And there's also an extra dungeon you can go into, which is cool because you have to kind of find this secret, and it's partway into the game, and like you don't necessarily need to find that little secret thing to do it. It's totally optional. You don't have to do it. But if you do find the secret and go in and do the dungeon and complete it, which has some puzzles and some combat challenges and stuff, and it's a good dungeon. Even though a lot of enemies do seem kind of weird because they're all new enemies thrown in for that dungeon. If you beat that, then you're given the choice of one of two tunics. Either a defense tunic, which pretty much, it's a blue tunic and a red tunic. The blue tunic ups your defense, so if you, basically like constantly having a Guardian Acorn on. And, the red tunic is, ups your power, plus it gives you that knockback like the piece of power would do. The only thing it does not do is give you the extra running speed, like the piece of power would. But you can still get those power-ups also. They'll still drop. You can get those to further, either to help, do the other side of your thing, or to just double buff your abilities. Like, oh, I have double defense now, or double attack. So you're just strong as shit. It's cool that you can do that, I suppose. And I think it's a pretty rewarding thing. It's cool because you have to kind of find it with a secret kind of sequence of stuff. And then you have to go in and do the puzzles and challenges in the dungeon. So it's really cool. If you're not playing on a Game Boy Color, it might be a little harder to do because of the lack of color, but I believe it's still possible to do through a little bit of trial and error stuff in it. So it's not impossible, and it adds a little bit more content there. There also there are more hints in the game, which I think is weird. They changed the statues. They're like these statues with like in the original game. They're like they're not statues. They're like stone slabs. You can find pieces of the stone slab within the dungeons, and you can put them on there, and you can read the hints in the dungeons, which is cool because then you're still finding it and trying to, oh, I found this thing and I want to put it in here. It wasn't just like a hint that the game told me to do. But it's also like, in here, there are more of them to give you more hints, and instead they're owl statues, and you find beaks to put into them, which I guess makes more sense, and it looks neater, it makes more sense, I guess, contextually, but it's also kind of, just weird seeing it for the first time. And the other like main thing that's different, is that there's also an extra shop, or an extra building with a guy with a camera, and he'll take screenshots of you. He'll take pictures of you, and they're little like custom pictures that happen with these little scenes, and they are triggered by you doing certain events in the game, and by doing those events, then he'll go and take the picture of you after you've talked to him. Now, the downsides to this edition of the game is that, for one thing, if you're playing it on a Game Boy, even though you can do that, probably should just been a straight-up Game Boy Color game, because you're not going to get the added color. It's going to make that color-based dungeon tougher for you, and, I mean, that's, feels like almost half the reason that you got it in the first place. Also, in regards to the color, while I do think it did make some of the parts of the game actually look really pretty, and look really cool, there were some things that were colored differently than I would have thought they would be. Some parts it made it a little harder to see, while some parts did make it easier to see. I just think overall there were some things that I was like, I imagine these things being a different color than they ended up in this game. Kind of like colorizing a black and white movie, except that it was actually done by the same people who, made the original, so it's not that big of a deal, I guess. And, As far as the hints go, there's it's nice to have the hints, and they did fix some typos in this game also, which is nice. But they put in like more hints, in the dungeons, and I don't think that was necessary. And maybe that's just me not remembering how many hints there were in the other dungeons, but I was pretty sure I do because I played the original a lot. I think there were more hints in there, but don't necessarily quote me on that one. And the other thing is with the screenshots, it's cool to have those to be like, oh, I want to go and try to find all these different things I can do and replay and keep trying to do these different actions to. I just want to keep trying to get all these actions to, do these screenshots. And try to get all of them. The problem is that with those screenshots is that some of them require you to have, certain things that are, time sensitive stuff for your quests earlier on. So like, oh, I already did this thing and I can't go back and like do it again. I can't like undo the progress I've done on that. So I'm just screwed now because I didn't talk to the camera guy early enough. The other thing that sucks is that you can't actually get all the photos at one time because there were in the beginning the first two photos you can only get one of the first two photos, either from saying yes and posing for the picture for the first time, or by continually saying no until he forces you to take a picture. And that, I don't know, that's just. That sucks that you can't get all of them. The idea is that you would, I guess, get a bunch of them, play again, and try to get the other ones. Good for replay value. And by playing it multiple times, you'd eventually get all of them and print them out with your Game Boy printer, which everyone had, of course. And then, that's why it was kind of cheap and just kind of there to make you want to buy the Game Boy printer. Which also is kind of weird for a game that's going more, I don't know. It just, overall, too, it's like, it's so, it's like, I don't know. It could have been good, and it just ended up being kind of an extra bullshit thing that you won't want to bother with. Also, I want to quick say that in regards to the extra dungeon, it's cool that that's there, extra content. The tunics, though, do make the game easier, and the game wasn't terribly hard to start with. And even though you can totally miss the dungeon, you don't have to do it. I still think it is something to say that regardless of how, I don't know, just however you might feel about it, it does make the game easier. That could be good or bad depending on how you feel about that, if you get one of the tunics. And I guess the other main thing about the game, too, I just find bizarre is how it's like, well, this came out in 98, right? The same year that Ocarina of Time came out on the Nintendo 64. So, are you going to get this slight remake of a Game Boy game that looks like it would just play on your Game Boy anyway? Or, ooh, it has color now. It was the big thing. You going to get that? Or are you going to get this brand new, for the first time, 3D Zelda adventure? And it doesn't even tie into the game. They don't even use the transfer pack to try and tie into that game or anything either. So, really, it was just kind of like, I don't think many people had it necessarily, but it just seems like it was probably a bad time to necessarily put that out. That's all I'm saying. Unless you just happen to be somebody who had a Game Boy or Game Boy Color, but not the Nintendo 64. I guess that would probably be the only real audience for that. The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening. So overall, I mean, these are great. I like the game. I've played the regular one the most. I think this is just tons of fun. I completed this one for the first time recently. And if you're thinking about getting both of them, there's no need, really. Unless you're a big Zelda fan like I am. I love these games. They're so cool, because, like, Link's Awakening is great for, if you're either new to Zelda, but you don't want to get into all the crazy Zelda lore, and you're like, I don't know if I can handle, learning about I'm not going to get all the nods to Gorons and Zoras and all that shit. It's nice to start for it, because it's cool, 2D, simple Zelda game as well, and it's just lots of fun, easy to get into, easy to love, I guess. And it's also good for people who have Zelda fatigue, where, I'm sick of hearing about, Zelda, the Gorons, the Deku, and the hero time bullshit timeline things. Where's this going to fit in the timeline? It was a fucking dream. How is it going to fit into the timeline? How? I don't know. I don't know. It could be anywhere. And it doesn't fit it doesn't really fit into it because it doesn't matter. This is great. I guess if I'm saying that basically you might want to just get Link's Awakening DX for that extra dungeon to get color, and I mean, I guess if you want to try to do the photos thing, that's fine. If you have a Game Boy printer, go right ahead. But they're both very good. I paid what, like $20 for this one. They're both worth, I'd say, like even at least like $30 to buy one of these because they're just so great. And if you're a Zelda fan, they're a must-have. If you haven't played them, just do it because they're great. And, you know, which one did you prefer? What did you think about these games? You know, just tell me if you love Link's Awakening like I do. Put it all in the comments because I fucking adore this game. Probably more than I should. And I've completed it multiple times, many times, getting all of the stuff. It's just great. I love it. It's awesome. And, I guess, I mean, you know, I kind of gave away what another game I'm going to review in that little middle part. But my battery's going to die, so I should probably shut the fuck up. That was a review. I've been a real person. My name is Sam. And I will see you for the rest of Zelda month.